It is now my honor and privilege to introduce a fellow Vietnam veteran, a fellow grunt. Hey, it's about time we got another grunt up here. And VFW Life member, who on February 27, 2013 became the first enlisted combat veteran to lead the Department of Defense, Secretary Chuck Hagel. Secretary Chuck Hagel joined the United States Army and volunteered to go to Vietnam, rising to the rank of sergeant while serving as infantry squad leader in 1968 alongside his brother Tom in the 9th Infantry Division. Following Vietnam, he would use his GI Bill to graduate from the University of Nebraska at Omaha, then entered the world of politics as Chief of Staff to Nebraska Congressman John McCullister. He would be nominated by President Reagan to serve as Deputy Administrator of the Veterans Administration, where he helped pioneer electronic health record keeping and push for increased benefits for Vietnam veterans suffering from Agent Orange. He would go on to create a cellular network company led the USO and G7 Summit Industrialized Nations, the World's Fair and Omaha-based investment bank. He was elected to the United States Senate in 1996, where among the many key pieces of legislation he supported and sponsored was the unwavering support of the post-9/11 GI Bill that President Bush signed into law in June of 2008. Within days of becoming secretary, he sat down with a VA Secretary Erickson II to discuss how DoD can help VA better take care of veterans. He continues face-to-face meetings on a regular basis with the Secretary. He has also already met twice with the veterans and military service organizations to open a dialogue and give us a voice inside the Department of Defense. He knows that we don't agree with some of his policies, but we also know he inherited virtually all of them. And the budget and mandatory sequestration just makes matters worse, and his decisions even more difficult. One thing the VFW knows, that his heart has always been there for our troops and their families, bringing a ground-pounder point of view to the sometimes questionable proposals we have heard from the Pentagon in the past. Comrades and sisters, it gives me great pleasure to present to you a fellow Vietnam veteran, a double Purple Heart recipient, and a life member of VFW Post 3704 in Columbus, Nebraska, the Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel. Let's give him a VFW welcome. Secretary, nice to see you, sir.
Thank you very much for your leadership. Appreciate you. Thank you. Good morning. Commander Hamilton, thank you. And thanks to all of your officers, leaders, the VFW. I'm not only grateful for the introduction, but what you do for this institution, for our country, for our families, and for our active duty military and their families. I'd like to also congratulate Bill Tyne and Mrs. Tyne, wish them every success as he takes over as the new incoming commander of the VFW. And as the Ladies Auxiliary to the VFW nears its 100th anniversary, I want to thank National President Leanne Lemley for her service and the auxiliary members for the work that you all do to honor our veterans and their families. And also congratulations to Sissy Burrell for following in Leanne's footsteps as the national president. It is a privilege to be with all of you here in Louisville, Kentucky. This is a remarkable convention, a convention that always has an impact on our country and on our leaders. And I also want to acknowledge the fact that, as you all know, that it wouldn't be possible without the hard work of your executive director, my not old friend, my longtime friend, Bob Wallace, and his entire team here, and also to Mrs. Wallace for just enduring living with you, Bob. So to all of the team and the organization, thank you, and to the city of Louisville for their always extraordinary hospitality. We thank you. I bring you greetings from our Commander-in-Chief, President Obama, who asked me to thank you, to extend his greetings to you, and let you know that he is aware of the work that you do on behalf of our veterans and their families, as well as our active duty military and their families. As you all know, this week is the 60th anniversary of the armistice that ended the Korean War. So I'd like to begin my remarks this morning by asking our Korean War veterans with us today to rise. If we could once again acknowledge our Korean War veterans here with us this morning. Thank you for your extraordinary service. The upcoming observance of the 60th anniversary is an opportunity for this country to fully express its profound gratitude for your service and your sacrifices and the contributions you've made. Later this week, I will join President Obama and Secretary Shinseki, who I know will be with you tomorrow, and we will take part in a special ceremony honoring our Korean War veterans in Washington, D.C. The Korean War veterans here today and all those across the country should know that your fellow citizens are proud of what you've accomplished and what your generation has contributed to our security and our prosperity here in this country, and certainly in Asia. I grew up in little towns in Nebraska where life revolved around the VFW and American Legion clubs. And as Commander Hamilton mentioned, I am a very proud life member of VFW Post 3704 in Columbus, Nebraska. Thank you. My father, a World War II veteran of the South Pacific, who would be 90 years old today, was an active VFW member, as is my brother Tom, who Commander Hamilton noted served with me in Vietnam. I've been a member for 45 years since I returned home from Vietnam in December of 1968. And to my home state commander, wherever you are out there, Harold Schlinder and Donna Finsky, President of the Auxiliary, and to all my fellow Nebraskans who are here today, thank you for your support, for your good work, and we're very proud of what you do in Nebraska. And of course, at this point, I'm obligated to say, go Huskers. Thank you. And I forgive that parochial comment. I know that now that we've joined the Big Ten, all you Ohio State, Michigan people question that. But I do have the microphone. But thank you for all your service to my friends in Nebraska. It's often said that no one does more for veterans than VFW. You're also a great friend to those who wear the uniform today. In my first couple of weeks in this office, as Commander Hamilton noted, I convened a roundtable with the VFW and other veterans organizations to let them know that they had a strong supporter and a friend in the Pentagon. I will continue to reach out to veterans organizations, the VFW, and listen to your concerns and seek your advice. All of us at the Pentagon and across this administration value your perspective, your experience, and your devotion to our military men and women. And as I'll explain this morning, we will need your continued help and partnership as we manage through a very significant period of historic transition and change. The United States is emerging from the largest period of sustained combat in our history, having unwound from the war in Iraq and continuing to wind down the war in Afghanistan. The world is complicated and it's dangerous. At the same time, we are confronting stark new fiscal challenges, including the imposition of steep and abrupt budget cuts under the mechanism of sequestration. We've gone through periods of realignment and redefinition after every major conflict in America's history. They always have enormous ramifications and consequences for our entire defense enterprise, in terms of our national security, in terms of our priorities, available resources, and the needs of men and women in uniform and their families. America must always have a strong, capable, and ready military, a military that is always prepared to defend our national interests. But fulfilling that obligation now and in the future will require us to fundamentally reshape defense institutions that were designed for different strategic and budgetary realities and times. Today, I want to describe the 4 principles that will guide these efforts to realign and reshape our military. First, prioritizing DoD's missions and capabilities around our core responsibility of defending our country. Second, maximizing the military's combat power. Third, preserving and strengthening America's military readiness. And fourth, honoring the service and sacrifice of our people. I'm laying out these principles today before the VFW because all of you in this audience helped build our military into the strongest, most capable, and most respected military on earth. You understand that these principles are essential to keeping it that way. And if we are to succeed in this effort, we will need your continued engagement and continued partnership. First, prioritizing core missions and capabilities. The Department of Defense must set clear strategic priorities to implement the President's Defense Strategic Guideline within the framework of a new fiscal reality and fewer resources. With $37 billion in mandated budget cuts that began on March 1st under sequestration, we are witnessing the largest single-year reduction in the defense budget since the drawdown after Korea. Unless the law changes, the department will have to absorb another $52 billion in cuts next year, and a total of $500 billion in cuts over the next decade. This is in addition to the $487 billion in reductions over 10 years that we are already implementing under the Budget Control Act of 2011. Sequestration is an irresponsible process, and it is terribly damaging. I hope that our leaders in Washington will eventually come to some policy resolution, a resolution that stops sequestration. But all of us who have the responsibility of leading defense, our Defense Department cannot lead the Department of Defense based on hope, based on we think, based on maybe. We have to prepare our institution for whatever comes. To that end, these cuts are forcing us to make tough but necessary decisions to prioritize missions and capabilities around our core responsibility, which is the security of our country. The reality is that many DoD missions and capabilities are essential to defending the nation and our interests, but some are not. Going forward, informed by the strategic choices and management review that I initiated 4 months ago, the Department will prioritize how we match missions to resources. The President must be assured that the options we present to him, the options he has to protect our country and defend our national interests, are ready and real. Second, maximizing the military's combat power. To protect our country in an era of reduced resources, we will have to maximize our military's fighting strength. Preserving combat power means the Department is going to have to deal with deep structural imbalances in our budget, particularly supporting infrastructure that has grown in size and expense. An organization of the department's size and complexity will always require a back office. But every dollar we spend on large staffs, large headquarters, and overhead, or facilities that we don't need, is a dollar that we don't have available to spend on readiness, training, and equipment for our troops, or on sustaining other vital programs that help to support our people and their families. In any budget environment, the Department of Defense should always be looking to find more efficient and affordable ways to do business. For several years, we have been paring back overhead, making our operations more effective, putting more emphasis and focus on deeper accountability and more savings. All of this in all of our departments, in particular our acquisitions and procurement programs. But if we are to preserve our decisive military edge, technological superiority, and our world-class professional personnel in the face of current reductions, we must find savings everywhere in our budget. Earlier this month, I directed a 20% reduction in the budget for my own organization, the Office of Secretary of Defense. General Martin Dempsey, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, offered a similar reduction in the Joint Staff. And we expect each military service to make comparable reductions in their headquarters budgets. I expect these cuts to not only save us money, significant money, but also to result in organizations that are more effective and efficient, as well as more agile and versatile. However, DoD will not be able to meet its budgetary savings requirements just through more efficient operations and headquarters reductions. It will require far more. 3, preserving and strengthening military readiness. To implement the steep and abrupt reductions that have been required under sequestration, we've had to make very difficult decisions to reduce, stop, and defer many activities and programs that keep our military prepared to fight, including training, maintenance, and modernization investments. Readiness cuts aren't always visible, but these cuts are having and will continue to have very damaging effects. During a visit to Fort Bragg last week, I heard from infantrymen whose units were short on training rounds. They were short on training rounds for their weapons. Each of the services have curtailed activities. Flying hours have been reduced. Ships are not sailing. And Army training has been halted. These kinds of gaps and shortages could lead to a force that is inadequately trained, ill-equipped, and unable to fulfill required missions. Going forward, preserving and strengthening our readiness must be a key priority. Unfortunately, when compared to other areas in DoD's budget, military readiness does not always have a vocal constituency, and you cannot buy back readiness. You all have fought and put your lives on the line for this country. You did so with the expectation that you would be given the equipment, the training, and support you needed to succeed. Many of you, especially those veterans of the Korean War, have seen the costs measured in precious American lives that come when sending a hollow force into battle. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. To avoid a prolonged readiness crisis and the lasting damage it would inflict on our defense enterprise, I have given clear guidance to the services. Guidance that they should not retain more people, equipment, and infrastructure than they can support and can afford to keep trained and ready. This will require careful balancing. Professional, quality individuals are the foundation of a ready force. They are the foundation of any institution. But strengthening readiness will ultimately demand that we address unsustainable growth in personnel costs, which represent half of the Defense Department's budgets right now, and crowds out vital spending on training and modernization. If trends continue, we could ultimately be left with a much smaller force that is well compensated but poorly trained and equipped. That would be unacceptable. Opposing, for political reasons or any other reason, every reform or cost savings measure that DoD presents to Capitol Hill is short-sighted and irresponsible, and it does not help our men and women in uniform, especially when these savings can be used to fund readiness and modernization. This will require Congress joining DoD in a partnership of difficult choices, priorities, and decisions. Not easy. It will take some courage. As we work to achieve the right balance, our men and women must always be assured that they will be fairly compensated, including earned benefits, given the best training and equipment, and treated as the professionals they are. And they must be always certain that their families will be taken care of. Fourth, honoring the service and sacrifice of our people. This brings me to another guiding principle that will inform all DoD efforts to reshape our defense enterprise: recognizing the service and sacrifice of our people. DoD is not a corporation and cannot be run like one. The costs of our decisions are measured not only in how they affect the financial bottom line, but in how they affect human lives. Making the right decisions about our future depends on our appreciation of the sacrifices our people and their families make for our country. We must continue to pay close attention to their needs and our commitments to them, including everything from family support programs to the resolute and painstaking work of POW MIA recovery efforts. Our people are strong and resilient after 12 years of war, but they are under stress, and so are the institutions that support them. Last week at Fort Bragg Soldiers and Family Assistance Center, I met a first sergeant who told me that in Afghanistan, he froze up and became overwhelmed with anxiety. He couldn't command. He had lost his ability to command. I asked him how many deployments he had had. He told me he was on his 5th consecutive combat tour when this happened. When you push human beings this hard, they break. And our people have been pushed close to the breaking point. Some have been pushed beyond the breaking point. As the wars wind down, we are also dealing with debilitating, insidious, and destructive challenges such as alcohol and drug abuse, suicide, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. Our military leaders do everything possible to protect our men and women on the battlefield. We must make this same commitment to our people here at home. I've made clear to DoD senior leaders that the scourge of sexual assault in the military must be stamped out. It is a stain. It is a stain on the honor of millions of military men and women, and it is a threat to the discipline and the cohesion of our force. I meet weekly with the department's senior leadership team to personally review sexual assault prevention and response efforts and ensure that the directives and programs we've initiated to stop sexual assault in the military are being implemented now. We're all accountable. We will fix this problem, and we'll fix it together. As I mentioned, ensuring the well-being of our people will require continued partnership with Congress. It also requires our constant cooperation and close coordination with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Secretary Shinseki and I have a long-standing, strong, very close relationship. He and I meet on a regular basis and are working with our departments to collaborate even more closely on resolving veterans' problems and issues. I have the highest regard, personally and professionally, for Secretary Shinseki and the work that he and his team are doing for our veterans. This is difficult. It's imperfect. The transition of our service members and their records leaving active duty into the care of Veterans Affairs should be smooth, it should be seamless and efficient. And we're committed to breaking down the barriers that inhibit this transition. I want to thank the VFW and other also veterans organizations for what they do to assist in this effort. Their continual focus and their cooperation and their push and their assistance is vital, and we appreciate that. Among several actions I've directed to partner with the VA, DoD is assisting VA's efforts to process the backlog of veterans' claims by sending teams of DoD experts to work with their VA colleagues in the Veterans Benefit Administration. Most backlog VA claims today are those veterans who served prior to Iraq and Afghanistan. In the vast majority of cases, DoD has provided all the information available to the VA. Still, we remain committed, absolutely committed, to continuing to help reduce VA's backlog, as we have a responsibility to work closely together on these problems. DoD and the VA are building a seamless system to ensure that future veterans never encounter some of the problems we are working to fix today. A centerpiece of this effort is DoD's revised Transition Assistance Program, which President Obama announced at last year's VFW convention. That has since been implemented. It's working well. It will go a long way toward ensuring that veterans have the health care, counseling, and support they need, and that they have the opportunity to find a good job, start a business, or pursue educations. As a former VA Deputy Administrator, U.S. Senator, and veteran, I've been involved in these issues for many years, so I have some understanding and appreciation for the complications and difficulties involved in getting these two large bureaucracies to work closely together. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but we're making good progress. We're committed to do it. Chairman Dempsey has correctly observed that the country is now at a defining time in our relationship with our newest generation of veterans. He's correct. Despite the many challenges facing our defense enterprise, we will get through this together and be stronger in the end, but only if we are prepared and willing to make wise and difficult decisions and be much more disciplined about setting our priorities. As I look out across this audience, I see thousands of veterans whose lives have been committed to helping our service members, their families, and our veterans and their families, helping them to ensure and succeed that this country honors their legacy with policies that are worthy of their sacrifices. All of you and the roughly 22 million veterans across this nation have an important role to play in the debate over our country's future national security priorities. When you shipped off to war, you didn't craft the policies that sent you there. You trusted your elected representatives to ask the right questions before sending you into the fight. You depended on them to provide you with everything you needed to succeed and come home safely. Not one American should ever be ordered into battle without our leaders being as sure as they can be that their decision is worthy of the sacrifices that will be made by our sons and our daughters. Thank you. God bless you and all the men and women who serve our great nation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just so you know, he's on vacation. He took his time to come because he wanted to be with us. So we certainly appreciate that. And we appreciate the communications back and forth with you very much.